Hi, good morning, students. Today we start the Constitution of India. The Constitution of any country is the mother of all laws of that country. The ethos of any law of any country cannot go outside the ethos which is laid down by the Constitution of that country. The Constitution of any country is like a tree trunk out of which the various branches of law emanate. Right from the beginning, the main aspect was on binding a society. We could bind the society by law. And that is why when we come to Austin, he says that law is the command of a sovereign. This law of the sovereign is the law which is all prevalent, which is prevalent over the entire land. The Constitution can be called that Austrian sovereign's command. The command of the sovereign can be in many forms. There are many forms of polity which have come up. What started earlier as monarchy in ancient times of the world, slowly then so many aspects came in. We have autocracies, we have monarchies, we have socialist countries, we have communist countries, and we have democratic countries. हर कंट्री का कमांड ऑफ द सॉवरेन तो एक है, पर उसका स्टाइल डिफरेंट होगा, उसका इथॉस डिफरेंट होगा, उसका ह्यू डिफरेंट होगा, उसका कलर डिफरेंट होगा. मोनार्की में जो कमांड है वो एक सॉवरेन एक इंसान देता है. ऑटोक्रेसी में he is all in all. For example, we have North Korea as an example today. Socialism or communism are later developments in the world. Karl Marx, we can say the father of socialism or communism. उसके बाद the concept of socialism and then communism comes in. I'll be discussing these later. But always one aspect had been there, that a country should be ruled by its own people, not one person. This thought process started somewhere in the 18th century. And there are two torchbearers on this: the American Revolution and the French Revolution of 1789, which ushered in the concept कि public की power public ही अपने आप को दे. The concept of republic, the concept of democracy, of the people, by the people, for the people. इंडिया का जो sovereign है वो हमें प्रियम्बल बता देता है, it is we the people. So we the people are going to make for ourselves a law, a mother law, and all other laws which are going to follow have to toe the line of this law. If any law goes beyond the four corners of the ethos and spirit of this law, then that law has no right to remain in this country. It will be against the Constitution, in simple words, unconstitutional, and it cannot stand even for a minute. A constitution, as I said, is the mother of all laws. It lays down all the aspects of the law of a land. When I say all the aspects, its spirit, its soul, and its polity. Any law to survive cannot be a stagnant law. कोई भी लॉ अगर सर्वाइव करना है, stagnant नहीं हो सकता. It always must change with the changing times. With a period of time, as time passes, dead wood always comes up over any tree. And on the tree of constitution also, a dead wood is bound to come by the ravages of time. This dead wood has to be removed. And that is why any law, including the mother of all laws, can never be static. Of course, while framing the constitution, one has to keep in mind that it should be based on those ideals which are evergreen, which do not normally change with the passage of time. Those are all ideals which are always applicable to any human. That is why a constitution cannot be, as I said, static. A self-cleansing process must be there, which should be inbuilt in a constitution. There should be self-amending provisions. Our constitution has this process also. This is why we have the process of amendment of a constitution, and there is a special article on this, Article 368. And as on today, till January 2020, or rather 2021, we have 104 amendments. Amendments means addition, change, alteration. It can mean anything. It can also mean repeal. In case an amendment is made by the legislature, and it does not fulfill the ideals of the constitution, or it is against the spirit of the constitution, or it is in any way inimical to the constitution, then also the doors of the constitution remain closed, even though the legislature may add it. But then we have a watchdog, the judiciary, which will declare it as unconstitutional. For example, we have a glaring example of NJAC, which though found its way into the constitution by an amendment, but then it was eroding the very fundamentals of the spirit of the constitution, and hence the Honorable Supreme Court put it in abeyance. As I just told you that every constitution has to have a self-cleansing process. It must be inbuilt. This self-cleansing can be a very easy process, as in the UK constitution, which is unwritten. लिखा ही नहीं है वो. तो जहाँ लिखा नहीं है, all you have to do is the legislature, House of Commons and House of Lords have to merely change it. As simple. It may be a written constitution like India, and it may be a very tedious process or a very simple process. We may be able to make certain changes by simple majority, but those are not technically called amendments. Or there can be a rigid and a very rigid process, both of which are laid down in Article 368. When I say rigid, it basically means by a special majority. And very rigid means passed by a special majority and then ratified by more than half of the states of the country. When we go to any constitution, it's like a living organism. A living organism has a soul, and a living organism has a body. It has a spirit, and it has a body. Since we are discussing Indian Constitution, I'll divide the Indian Constitution into two parts. The philosophical part of the Indian Constitution, which contains the soul of the Constitution, the spirit of the Constitution, the ethos of the Constitution. And the other part, the body of the Constitution, the polity part. The philosophy of the Constitution, the philosophical part of the Constitution, which I said contains the very ethos, the spirit, the philosophy, is the most important guiding principle of any constitution. Because if we make any law, it cannot go against this philosophical part. The philosophical part of the Constitution can be discerned, can be seen in the preamble, the fundamental rights, the directive principles of state policy, and the fundamental duties. The philosophy of a constitution, the spirit of a constitution, and now I am talking in context of India, did not come in a day. The forefathers of the constitution, the team headed by Dr. Ambedkar, who was himself one of the most brilliant people, one of the connoisseurs of law, undoubtedly. It was not that they closed their eyes and switched a magic wand and presto, the philosophy came. No. It took centuries. The sense of India is in the philosophy of the Constitution. The Indian Constitution is a very robust Constitution. The sense of the Indian culture दिखता है उसमें. Indian culture, which started from the prehistoric times of the Indus Valley civilization, which we can only discern through seals, and still the writings on the seals have not been deciphered. Even there, in the seals, only the pictographic, we see the essence of India. We see the sense of Hinduism. We see culture, dance, etc. The bronze statue of a dancing woman in prehistoric times shows that Indian culture was never a mundane culture. It was never a run-of-the-mill culture. It was a rich culture, replete with art, architecture, trade, commerce. Even in the times when the other parts of the world were still cavemen, were still Stone Age men, India was already a developed culture. The advent of the Vedic age into India, with the advent of the Aryans into India, the true philosophy comes into fore. The Shrutis, the Smritis, the Upanishads all lay down an ethos. The ethos of tolerance, the ethos of equality. The Rajan was not an autocrat. He was governed by dharma. He was not someone who was someone like North Korea's Mr. Kim. He was governed by dharma, he was amenable to reason, and basically what we call today of liberty, equality, fraternity was prevalent even then. The Rajan had a Sabha and a Samiti, the precursors of today's modern Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. In those Vedic times, that is why I said the spirit of Indian Constitution was not just wished into by a magic wand. It's a byproduct of centuries. The sense of Indianism has seeped into the very entails of this land. The whole Indian soil is colored with the hue of this rich culture. No doubt, with the advent of time and Brahmanism, deadwood did engulf the earlier Vedic age. But then we had immediate revolts. We had Jainism, Buddhism, Sikhism. And they all propagated what? Equality. What was the basic message of Jainism, Buddhism and Sikhism? Equality. What we find today in Article 14. I think it's wrong to say that we borrowed the principle of equality from the French Revolution. I'll say that the French Revolution borrowed this principle from our ancient times. These revolts against Brahmanism showed us the path of equality, tolerance. So many other tribes, so many other nationalities came into India. Indo-Bactrians, Indo-Greeks, Muslims later on. They all came into the common cauldron. And on the fire of time, all these came into the common cauldron and got engulfed in one fire, the fire of India. They gave up their own distinct aspects and acquired the color of India. If they had some different colors, different hues, all of those were shed off, and now a common hue of India colors everyone who comes into India. And that is why we very fondly say that India is what we call unity in diversity. This merging of different communities, different nationalities into the common cauldron of India, which produced a common entity, an Indian, was the basis of secularism in India. There were Christians, there were Portuguese, there were Bactrians, there were Greeks, there were later on Muslims, Mughals. All lived together happily. The spirit of secularism was the very root of Indian culture. Tolerance, respect for each other's culture. It is only when the British come that they start the divide and rule policy. And gullible Indians fell a prey to them. Till 1905, till the partition of Bengal, nobody knew the difference between a Muslim and a Hindu. The 1857 war was fought together. The Muslims and Hindus fought the British together. In other words, the basic principles of the Constitution which we see today were a part of Indian culture. The soul of a person cannot be changed. It cannot be acquired in one day. It takes time. No doubt other cultures do contribute it, no doubt about that. Any changes which are coming up in the world, whether it was the advent of the Magna Carta in 1215 or the Glorious Revolution in England or the American Revolution or the French Revolution of 1789, the unification of Germany, the unification of Italy, the rise of the proletariat and hence socialism, the rise of Karl Marx ideologies, communism, and the 20th century principle of communism ingrained in the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917. The thought process of Lenin, the thought process of communism in Russia, in China, everything was imbibed. Indian Constitution, the framers of the Indian Constitution had a distinct advantage. They had a lot of raw material to bring out the best. They had our own richest culture available to them to delve on, and they also had the modern day principles coming from various revolts, revolutions, and changes in the world. They could pick and choose. Sometimes, there is a criticism. The criticism is that Indian Constitution is a patchwork. It's a borrowed constitution. It's a constitution which was, we can choose from various constitutions, and a patchwork has come up. There are some constitutional experts who have criticized the Constitution. But I beg to differ. Probably they do not have a proper understanding of the ethos of our Constitution. No doubt we did go into other constitutions, but what is wrong in taking out good things from other constitutions and blending them in our existing circumstances? क्या गलत है इसमें? Patchwork shows anything which we have borrowed from anything else does not show as a patch in our Constitution. It is so beautifully blended that it appears as a uniform whole. Everything is so beautifully, immaculately interwoven in the fabric of the Constitution that you cannot discern that this point has come up from here. It has beautifully blended with the entire thought process of the Constitution, the soul of the Constitution, the philosophy of the Constitution. The spirit of the Constitution is a very robust spirit. It is based on the modern day human ideals of human rights. At the same time, it is not archaic. It looks forward. When we go to the directive principles, it looks forward to a scientific temper. And when we go to our fundamental duties, it is reiterated. The very preamble of our constitution, which actually incidentally came at the end of the constitution, it was written in the end, is one brilliant piece of a document which reveals almost the entire constitution. It can be called the key to the constitution. It opens the constitution and gives us a panoramic view of the entire constitution through just one page. The ethos of the constitution, the spirit of the constitution, the body of the constitution, the structure of the constitution, all can be discerned in just one page. So brilliantly it has been written. As students of law, it is our duty to understand, to go behind what is written and understand the spirit, the ethos. It is a brilliant piece of work where the lofty ideals of mankind have been saved in this document. On one hand, the lofty ideals of mankind, and on the other hand, the individual rights of a person. A beautiful balance, and at the same time, not an untamed individual rights, but a proper taming in the interest of the entire general public. So it's a very beautiful balance of individual rights, human rights, and a restraint of the state, so that there is a beautiful parallel. The second part of the Constitution deals with the body of the Constitution. Our Constitution is one of the longest. It was earlier the longest, but later on, the Republic of Yugoslavia made a longer Constitution. Why is our Constitution the longest Constitution? Because it is a 3-tier Constitution. We have 3 independent tiers. The first tier is the Union. The second tier is the states. And the third tier, which was introduced by the 73rd and the 74th Amendment Act, the grassroots level democracy, the Panchayati Raj, the municipalities. There are 3 stages of governance in India. We have the Union, the central laws. We have the states. And then very beautifully, the control of the Union over the states. Federalism, yet a quasi-federalism. We'll be discussing all these aspects. Each tier stands on 3 pillars. 3 independent pillars on which each tier of our Constitution stands. The first pillar being the legislature. The legislature makes laws of the country. Who is the legislature? It is we the people, who are representing ourselves through an indirect democracy. We send our own representatives whom we elect to the parliament, and they make laws for us. So we are basically making laws for ourselves. The executive will implement those laws. The executive in India, the ministers, are a part of the legislature also. So the legislature makes the laws, the executive implements them. The judiciary, the most important pillar, is the watchdog of the other two pillars. It is very easy for the first two pillars to join hands, to gang up. But then it is a judiciary who can always put an end or a stop to any law, any order, etc., which has been passed by the legislature if it is against the spirit of the Constitution. Any law which is against the Constitution, the judiciary, the watchdog, will immediately stall it. It will not be allowed to become a part of the law of the land. But then the question arises, is the judiciary now absolutely without any control? Is there any leash on which we can keep the judiciary? The answer is yes. The legislature has the power to remove the judiciary. A Supreme Court judge or a High Court judge can be removed by the legislature. So it's this beautiful interdependence and inter-control which has been the mainstay of our Constitution. If the legislature goes overboard, the judiciary is there to tame him. And if the judiciary goes overboard, the legislature is there to leash it. It's a beautiful balance, what we call a golden balance of powers. A similar structure exists in all the three tiers. If we have the parliament, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, and we have the central ministries and the Supreme Court in the center, in the states we have the legislature in the form of Vidhan Sabhas or Vidhan Parishads in some states, and their own ministries, executive, and the state judiciary headed by the high courts and then the lower courts. It is a parallel structure. And this inter-control of these three pillars is the beauty of our Constitution. After the 73rd and 74th Amendment Act, we have again the three pillars standing there also. We have small local laws being made by the panchayats also. The executive being embodied in the Panchayati Raj system or in the urban municipality system, the mayors and all. And also we have the Gram Nyalay, the Gram Nyalay Act I've taught you in CRPC. The Gram Nyalay is the judiciary on the grassroots level. This is the reason why it is one of the longest constitutions. Our Constitution is something which we have to be proud of. We got our independence along with our neighbors, Pakistan. But somehow they have still not been able to, with all due regards to the polity of Pakistan, they had a lot of upheavals. The army rule comes in many times. Though there is a semblance of democracy, but we all know the real truth. The reason being that they did not have a robust constitution. Anyway, we are not here to criticize others' constitutions. We are here to discuss our constitutions. The strength of India is the strength of the constitution. India has remained one and is emerging as the biggest democracy of the world. The two torch bearers of democracy in the world are America and India. The reason is this bare act. It is this bare act, the Constitution of India, which has unified the country, which has given it a single administration, which has given it a robust spirit. It's a tribute to the makers of to the framers of the Constitution, that they have made such a wonderful Constitution that not a word can be changed. In a very short span when they wrote the Constitution, and of course kudos to the Constitutional Assembly debates, every word has been thrashed, and it is no doubt one of the most beautiful pieces of legislation and work of law. After this general talk on the Constitution, I would now like to go to the phases of the Constitution. How the Constitution came into being. What are the epochs of our Constitution? I can divide the entire phases of the Constitution into 4 parts. The first part is the grant of the charter to the East India Company to trade with India, East and Southeast Asia. The second one being the Battle of Plassey and the Battle of Buxar and the grant of Diwani of Bengal to the East India Company. The third epoch being the 1857 revolt and the Government of India Act 1858. And the fourth epoch being the Government of India Act 1935 till the framing of our Constitution. कि 4 phases में, historical phases में मैं Constitution का development देख सकता हूं. पहला phase लेते हैं. You know, India always was the most coveted place for trade in the world. जैसे आज के दिन में सब अमेरिका भागते हैं, everybody had a dream to come to India. By the Gupta period times, India was called the Golden Sparrow, सोने की चिड़िया. The most important reason being the spices which are available in Kerala. All the traders used to head for Kerala. That is why Calicut. अगर हम अरब इन्वेजन देखें सिंध का, वो भी स्पाइसेस के लिए आए थे पहले. The entire world used to come to India for spices. It was a dream for the European countries to reach India. उस टाइम पे airplanes नहीं होते थे. By sea was the only route. And they had to come below the Cape of Good Hope, जो अफ्रीका के नीचे है, वहां से लंबा चक्कर मार के आते थे. कोलंबस भी इंडिया के लिए चला था, वहां गया अमेरिका. However, the first European to reach India was Vasco da Gama. In 1498, he reached Calicut. This opened the ways for the Europeans to come into India. Slowly, the British had become a naval power. Battle of Trafalgar वगैरह वो बहुत सारी चीजें. Let's not go into history. Now the East India Company requested the king, to give the charter for exclusive trading rights in India and East Asia. And they got the charter, the Queen gave the charter in 1600. This started the advent of the British in India. William Hawkins visited Jahangir's court in 1608 and got certain concessions to trade in India. However, Sir Thomas Roe, who visited now Jahangir's court in 1615, and he stayed in Jahangir's court for 3 years. He was the main person who got permission from the Mughal emperor to set up trading posts in India, and they set up the first factory in Surat. However, the most fertile area of India was Bengal, because of obvious reasons that the entire Ganga and the Brahmaputra fall into this area, which make it silt. The silt brought by the rivers is the most fertile land. In fact, this Doab area is one of the most fertile lands, and then this Bengal area, anything and everything grows there. And that is why Bengal was always one of the most coveted places for any Indian king. The Mughals, of course, had a very important place for Bengal. In the meantime, the East India Company had Robert Clive as one of the governors, who was a very pushing person. And he spread the trade over the entire country. At the same time, he was also a military strategist. पर अभी तक कोई wars नहीं हुई थी. The first war, where the Bengal governor Sirajuddaulah, by treachery, ब्रिटिश तो मशहूर थे ट्रेचरी के लिए, जो उंगली सीधे घी से नहीं निकलती टेढ़ी उंगली करके निकाल लो. The infamous Battle of Plassey, 1757. मीर जाफर, मीर कासिम बाद में आता उसका. Now उनको ट्रेचरी से बैटल ऑफ प्लासी जीत गए. Battle of Plassey, we can say, is a turning point in the history, because now, for the first time, a trading company becomes a military company. लड़ाइयां लड़ रहा है और लड़वा रहा है, और सडनली जिसको कहते हैं मुंह पे खून लग गया कि ओके वी कैन विन. एक्चुअली बैटल ऑफ प्लासी के पीछे एक ब्लैक होल ट्रेजेडी थी. लेट्स नॉट गो इनटू अगेन हिस्ट्री. जब बैटल ऑफ प्लासी में हार गए, देन द एंटायर इंडियंस बिकेम वन. मुगल्स, और अब मीर जाफर के बाद उसका जो लड़का था उसने भी रियलाइज किया गलती कर दी, सारे एक हो गए. बट देन द कंबाइंड फोर्सेस वर डिफीटेड इन द फेमस बैटल ऑफ बक्सर. दिस बैटल ऑफ बक्सर changed the entire history of India. 1764 में हुई थी ये बक्सर की बैटल, और उसमें ये कंबाइंड फोर्सेस इंक्लूडिंग मुगल्स की हार गई. इससे 4 साल पहले एक 1760 में वॉर होती है बिटवीन फ्रेंच, क्योंकि फ्रेंच ने अपना बहुत बड़ा दे हैड गिवन द ह्यूज प्रेजेंस खासकर साउथ इंडिया में. ब्रिटिश ने फ्रेंच को भी हरा दिया 1760 में बैटल ऑफ वांडीवाश में. अब इनका एक छत्र राज रह गया, और जब इन्होंने मुगल फोर्सेस एंड कंबाइंड फोर्सेस सबको हरा दिया, अब इन्होंने पहली बार डिमांड किया दीवानी ऑफ बंगाल. दीवानी बेसिकली मेंट ग्रांट ऑफ रेवेन्यू राइट्स. सो जब ये बैटल ऑफ बक्सर हार गए, तो अब उन्होंने पहली बार मिलिट्री एंड एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव राइट्स ले लिए. ग्रांट ऑफ दीवानी जो है, दीवानी बेसिकली मेंट all the revenue एक ट्रेडिंग कंपनी जो सिर्फ ट्रेडिंग करने आई थी, मुगल बादशाह और सारे कंबाइन को हरा के एज अ राइट बंगाल, एंड बंगाल उस टाइम वाज नॉट वेस्ट बंगाल आज का, इट वाज उड़ीसा, बिहार, बंगाल, बांग्लादेश एंड पार्ट ऑफ असम, उतना बड़ा था वो पूरा, उस पूरे का रेवेन्यू राइट ले लेती है। अब रेवेन्यू राइट्स मिल गए जब, इन्होंने सत्यानाश करना शुरू कर दिया। they knew that हम सिर्फ इंडिया में पैसे कमाने आए हैं। फैमिन्स आने शुरू हो गए, बुरा हाल हो गया, करप्शन फैल गई, और ये लोग बे इंतहा पैसा कमा के इंग्लैंड जाने शुरू हो गए। The stories of their wealth reached the British Parliament. The stories of corruption, nepotism in the East India Company. Also the plight of the Indians, who after the grant of Diwani had become impoverished, forced the British Parliament to now pass the first act. The first act, the Regulating Act. The Regulating Act शुरुआत करता है एक्ट्स की इंडिया में। जैसा कि नाम बताता है, to regulate the affairs of the company, the corruption, the nepotism, which was so far entrenched into the company now, had to be set right. The East India Company had become too big for its shoes. The powers had to be clipped. They had to be regulated. And that forms the basis of the first act, the Regulating Act. So first let's start with the first act. इससे पहले नो डाउट एक आया था मेयर्स कोर्ट्स एक्ट, जो पहले आया था, but that was basically to control the commercial activities of East India Company only. इतनी सिग्निफिकेंस का नहीं था, पर ये जो एक्ट आता है इसके बहुत फार रीचिंग इफेक्ट्स होते हैं। सो लेट्स गो टू द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल हिस्ट्री, जो अब हमारे बैटल ऑफ बक्सर के बाद, ग्रांट ऑफ दीवानी के बाद जो करप्शन एंड नेपोटिज्म आता है, और अब उनको भी पता चल जाता है ब्रिटिश में कि वहां तो बहुत दौलत है। एट द सेम टाइम प्लीज रिमेंबर, दिस वाज द टाइम व्हेन ब्रिटेन वाज बिकमिंग the world's industry. Industrialization was setting in. अब खुद इतना सा कंट्री है यूके, they needed resources, they needed markets, because उनके यहां ना तो कॉटन उगती है ना कुछ होता है। मिल्स उन्होंने बना दी, मैनचेस्टर वगैरह, पर मिल्स चले कहां से अगर रॉ मटेरियल नहीं है? तो रॉ मटेरियल यहां से आना था। रॉ मटेरियल आने के बाद कपड़ा बन जाएगा, तो वो बिकेगा कहां? उसकी मार्केट चाहिए थी, वो इंडिया थी या ईस्ट इंडीज थी। That is why they suddenly got up and realized that if these few people could amass so much wealth, then imagine if we could go into India as British Empire. कान खड़े हो गए उनके, और वहां से स्टार्ट होती है ब्रिटिश के पंजे गाड़ने की इंडिया में। और ये पहला जो अटेम्प्ट है पंजे गाड़ने का, if I'm allowed to use this rather colloquial term, ये 1773 के रेगुलेटिंग एक्ट से होता है। So let's go to the Regulating Act. The Regulating Act 1773 is of a huge constitutional importance. because it was the first step by the British government, and I'm stressing the word British government, to control and regulate the affairs of the East India Company in India. It recognized for the first time the political and administrative function of the company. The company was no longer a mere trading company. And most importantly, it laid down the foundations of a central administration in India for the first time. This regulating act is also called India Bill 1773. The Prime Minister was Lord North, sometimes also called Lord North Bill. And the king at that time was King George III. If we see the salient features of this act, the first thing was that the charter of East India Company was not an indefinite charter. It was renewable after every 20 years. इसलिए हर 20 साल के बाद एक चार्टर आएगा जो आगे इनको इजाजत देगा या नहीं देगा, या फिर उनके कंडीशंस नए नए लगाएगा. इसलिए 1773 के बाद हर 20 साल के बाद एक चार्टर आता है. 1793, 1813, 1833 एंड 1853 का आखिरी चार्टर आता है. तो जो कहानी शुरू हुई थी चार्टर ऑफ 1600 से, जहां ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी को एक्सक्लूसिव ट्रेडिंग राइट्स दिए गए थे, उनकी नकेल डाल दी जाती है, उनको कंट्रोल कर लिया जाता है 1773 के रेगुलेटिंग एक्ट से, जिससे एक प्रोविजन आ जाता है कि फ्रॉम नाउ ऑनवर्ड्स आफ्टर एवरी 20 years the charter will have to be renewed. The next important point is the British government for the first time had supervisory rights on the company. By that time there were 3 presidencies: Bombay, Calcutta and Madras. For the first time we have centralization, and the governors of Bombay and Madras are made subordinate to Calcutta. Earlier तीनों इंडिपेंडेंट थे, पर अब सीट ऑफ पावर जो है वो कैलकटा बनती है. और 1911 तक, जब तक न्यू दिल्ली शिफ्ट नहीं किया गया कैपिटल, सीट ऑफ पावर ब्रिटिश की हमेशा कैलकटा थी. So the start of centralization of power starts right from here. Bengal was given prominence because of the fact I told you, because of its commercial importance. And Calcutta now became the seat of power. And that is why the governor of East India Company was now called Governor General of India. I'm sorry, he was not Governor General of India, he was only Governor General. Governor General of India बाद में आएगा. तो गवर्नर जनरल की उपाधि देती जाती है गवर्नर को, और ये गवर्नर जनरल वुड बी कंट्रोलिंग द प्रेसिडेंसीज, यानी कि गवर्नर्स ऑफ बोथ बॉम्बे एंड मेड्रास. जो पहला गवर्नर जनरल बना इंडिया का, ही वॉज लॉर्ड वॉरेन हेस्टिंग्स. जैसे कि मैंने बोला, ये पहला स्टेप था सेंट्रलाइजेशन ऑफ पावर्स का, because the governors of Bombay and Madras were made subordinate to the Governor General of Bengal, unlike earlier when the presidencies were independent of each other. Also, one very, very important aspect was that 2 important government organizations were set up to help the Governor General administer the whole India in a proper way. these two important government organizations were, pehla, the first Supreme Court in India, or I'll call it the first British Supreme Court in India, which was at Calcutta, what we called Sadr-e-Nizamat. तो पहला सुप्रीम कोर्ट जो बनता है इंडिया में, वो रेगुलेटिंग एक्ट की वजह से बनता है. ऑल्सो एक कैलकाटा काउंसिल बनाई गई, कैलकाटा काउंसिल टू असिस्ट द गवर्नर जनरल. हाउएवर इसमें बहुत कमियां थी क्योंकि जल्दी में बनाया गया था ये लॉ. रिलेशनशिप ऑफ गवर्नर जनरल with both of these, Supreme Court and Calcutta Council, was not made very clear. And that is why open conflict started between the two. That is why in fact एक amending act पास हुआ था 1781 में, जिन्होंने इन दोनों ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस की पावर रिड्यूस करनी शुरू कर दी और गवर्नर जनरल को मोर एंड मोर पावर देनी शुरू कर दी. एक जो उस टाइम पे ऑर्डर दिया गया था वो ये था कि मुस्लिम्स विल बी द केसेस रिगार्डिंग मुस्लिम्स विल बी डिसाइडेड एज पर मुस्लिम लॉ एंड हिंदूज का एज पर हिंदू लॉ. ये इसी टाइम पे डिसाइड हुआ और जब तक 1935 का एक्ट नहीं आता तो बिल्कुल यही चलता रहा कि जितने भी पर्सनल लॉज हैं, और अभी तक प्लीज रिमेंबर आईपीसी नहीं आई थी, आईपीसी तो लागू होगी 1 जनवरी 1862 को. गवर्नर जनरल हैड 4 मेंबर्स कॉल्ड द गवर्नर जनरल इन काउंसिल जो इसको असिस्ट करेंगे. और अब पहली बार कोड ऑफ कॉन्डक्ट लगाया जाता है. एक ब्यूरोक्रेटिक प्रिंसिपल्स आते हैं इन द सेंस दैट द कंपनी सर्वेंट्स वर फॉरबिडन टू ट्रेड और टू टेक गिफ्ट्स और ब्राइब्स फ्रॉम नेटिव्स, जो आज भी हम सेम प्रिंसिपल फॉलो करते हैं ब्यूरोक्रेसी का. आई बीन अ ब्यूरोक्रेट इन द आईपीएस फॉर सो मेनी डेकेड्स. एग्जैक्टली यही प्रिंसिपल्स उस दिन 1773 के एक्ट से जो लेड डाउन थे आज भी चलते हैं सेम. ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट का जो कंट्रोल था वो पहली बार बढ़ा दिया जाता है. इट स्ट्रेंथेंड द कंट्रोल ऑफ द ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट on the company by requiring the court of directors to report about the civil, military and revenue affairs in India to the parliament, to the court of directors. तो अब हमारा एक कोर्ट ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स बन गए, द गवर्निंग बॉडी ऑफ द कंपनी, जो इंग्लैंड में बैठेगी, जो लंदन में बैठेगी. और वो वहां से अब इनको, जो अभी तक बिल्कुल कंट्रोललेस थी कंपनी, कुछ भी करती थी, उन पे अब कंट्रोल आ गया कोर्ट ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स का. और पहली बार अगर हम कहें इंग्लैंड का दखल आ गया इंडिया में. What was the importance of the Regulating Act 1773? It was the basic act which now led to other constitutional acts. It opened the gates to other acts. First time it recognized the political and administrative status of the company. The company's powers were curtailed. But it was also the first attempt to centralization. It was the foundation of central administration in India. It laid the foundation. All the company's territories were unified and kept under one head, Governor General in Calcutta. And for the first time, law uniform हो गया. लॉ बनेगा कलकत्ता में, यूनिफॉर्मली अप्लाई होगा बॉम्बे में भी और मेड्रास में भी. And most importantly for us, no doubt also the code of conduct was laid down for public servants of the company, जो बाद में precursors बनते हैं code of conduct for public servants. But most importantly, और हम law के students के लिए, it is the start of the judicial system in India. For the first time, we have the creation of the judicial system's apex court in the Supreme Court, Sadr-e-Nizamat, which now starts the basic unified system of judiciary, which ultimately we see today. So these were the basic aspects of the first act, 1773 ka regulating act. As I said, the regulating act opened the gates of legislation into India. It can be safely called the precursor of all laws in India, all British laws in India. We ran out of time. I'll take it up from here in my next lecture. Thank you. God bless.